there's like $4, $6. There's something for different budgets, but those prices are usually the annual price, which means, so it is $4 a month, but that's if you pay annually, so you have to pay $48 up front, basically, yeah. So let me show you what I have here. So I own a bunch of websites, okay, and this is the one for the classroom. It's popping up here. Maybe it'll pop up. So I went out and I purchased some domain names. You can go to the internet and say, I want to buy a domain name. WordPress will sell you a domain name. Google can sell you a domain name. A number of places can sell you different domain names, okay? And some of them are like literally $3, $4, $5 a year. Some of them are even free. WordPress, I think, gives you, if you sign up for a plan, they give you a domain for free, okay? So you can get it for free. With DNS, I have this domain name that you all go to, I assume. Okay, if you've never gone to this domain name, I don't know how you're keeping up with the class, but it has domain name servers that tell your computer DNS server how to connect to that website, okay? I can go in and I can create what are called DNS records, and you all go to the professor one, okay? And I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a second. Down here. I use this third-party service simply because it's easy, it's cheap, okay? But I can go in here, and these are DNS records, okay? This is the one for our website, okay? And if you go to this DNS name, it actually goes to, you can see this really long name that's not user-friendly. Okay? If you all had to type that every single day, you wouldn't be able to find my site. You'd probably mistype it. I mean, I would do the same. This is a special type of DNS record. It's an alias. That's what the C name stands for. It's an alias. It's just a pointer to another site. Okay? And in this case, it's this domain name. Oops, this domain name here. Okay? Now, I don't have any IP addresses in this particular DNS. I'll show you a different one that does. Okay? There are different types of DNS records. A C name is an alias. Okay? It's kind of like the icon on your menu bar at the bottom of your screen. That's not actually Word. Word's installed in your program folder, or your application folder. It's a pointer. Okay? Here's where my Word program is. Here's where my Google Chrome is. That's all this is it's an alias. Okay? And then actually for this one, I don't really have any other things that are of interest to you. So let me show you the other domain that I have here. That actually has more content in it. So in this one, I have a number of things. Number one is I have email. Okay, let me show you email. Email uses a type of DNS called a mail exchange or MX record. So when you send me an email, none of you use this email address, but let's just pretend it's our school email. It looks up ucr.edu and says, okay, I've got an email to send. Where do I send it to at UCR? And UCR will have something like this that points to Google for all of you. Okay? And it goes to Google, and then Google says, okay, great, I got this piece of mail. Who does it go to? Oh, it's ucr.edu. It goes to UCR server. And then UCR, their server at Google, goes and says, oh, it goes to Johnny Smith or Sally Smith or whatever your name is. Okay? And then it routes it. But if you don't have these, you can't have email for your domain. You have to have that type of domain record. Okay? Now, there's some other types, and I may have taken them off from here. Yeah, because I don't have my website up anymore for this thing. So I don't have any A records. I don't have any other records for this particular domain. But an A record would point to an actual IP address. Okay? So that's what Google has. Google.com has an A record that points to an IP address, actually a bunch of IP addresses. Okay? So if you go buy a domain name, you've got to go have someone set this all up for you and manage it. Okay? So kind of a pain. You don't need it for this class. All right. Okay. Now, I wanted to stop and ask for questions about the project. I would rather ask them here, give you all the answer than have, well, honestly, I just don't have the bandwidth for every single person to come to office hours. There's just not enough time in a day. So project questions, yes. Yes. So it can be any database you choose for the design diagram, okay? And you can use any tool that you want. Lucidchart is free. You could, honestly, if you can do this legibly, I'm gonna put the caveat if you do it legibly, you could do it on a piece of white paper or graph paper, one or the other. Don't do lined paper, it's too hard to read. You can draw it out by hand, but make sure that it's legible. If you do it in pencil, take a picture of it. If you can't read it, then do it in pen or something, okay? So you don't have to use software if you don't want to. It just generally makes it a little easier. Well, Google Lucidchart for students. There should only be two choices, a free one and a paid one. Mm-hmm. Oh, the drawings? Oh, the drawings. You're just looking for an ER diagram template. Yeah, ER diagram template, yeah. You can search for it. Mm-hmm. So for the database, for that design, you can choose. You don't need to do, I have a class where you actually have to do all of the above. And so their database diagram, they're doing it in groups of like 6 people. And it's a database class. So they're going to be doing probably 100 different tables. No, nobody in here has to do that, okay? I think that usually I save 5 to 6 tables. So pick a small data set where you can break it into 5 or 6 tables. So you could do employee related data in HR, and you could say employees, department, appraisals, performance ranking, that sort of thing. You can come up with the data you make up yourself, yeah. But I don't really care because it's an ER diagram, you don't need the actual data. You just need to understand the data type. So for example, employee table would have your employee ID number, your name, and it would be your first name in a column, your last name in another column. It might have, that would probably be it, maybe your phone number or something like that. Then you might have a title, but your title will be in a titles table. So titles would then be a separate table with a title ID because you want to normalize the data so that you don't have multiple themes. And a title's a different theme that you track versus names because there's going to be multiple people titles. You don't want to have like it in the table with the employees because you might be a vice president of engineering and he might be a VP of engineering. It's the same title. So if you put it in the employee table, you get data issues. So you put it in a separate titles table, yeah. Yes, you would depict the relationships, yeah. Yeah. 5, 6, yeah, it depends on what you do. For financials, you might have a few more because you have accounts payable, receivable, that sort of stuff, okay? So, yeah, and you can find examples online. If you went in Google image search, you'd find examples if you said, hey, what does a ER diagram for a financial system look like? You'll get a huge document that's probably very unreadable. I know because I've done it before. And then you go and design your own based on that, or employee or whatever. For this class, it just needs to be a relatively simple diagram. I just want to know that you know the cardinality. That's really what I'm trying to look for. And that's what the TAs are going to look for. Yes.
So for the Lucidchart, right? Mm-hmm. Can you just go online to the free version and show how to, because like it doesn't really show us how to create the table.
Yes, I will do that real quick here. I think I did it on the board that when we did it in class, and I might have shown it on Lucidchart as well. You know what, let me drag it over. I want to make sure I pick the right one. It's too hard for me to read. Okay. While that's loading, let me address a couple of other common questions that I keep getting. Okay. We will be doing systems design and project management starting next week. Okay. If your friends are not here, tell them to show up. It's complicated. You're going to want to do it in class together. If they miss class, I'm not going to do a separate private tutoring session for people who just don't show up to class. Most people show up to class every week, but if you know someone's not been coming, you might want to just peer pressure because today I didn't take attendance, but I see a lot of gaps, so I might take it next time if we see this many gaps, okay? This is an ER diagram, and I'll show you how I created it, okay? In just a second, let's see. Where's the zoom? So you can all see better. But when we do the system design, we're going to go through user stories. We're going to go through the project plan next week. And then you can start doing those for your project starting next week. Okay. All right, so this is an ER diagram, kind of like the ones we had before. I'm going to shut off the lights, sorry, just might be easier to see that way. Okay. I can create new tables here by doing this right here. I just pick which one I want, okay, depending on how many columns I want in it. Boom. I drag it over. I have a new one. Okay. I can name it whatever. Titles. Okay. Let me see if I can make that even bigger. Now, when I'm ready to draw the lines, I don't need to go find a pattern over here, okay? I just go and I click on my table somewhere. It doesn't matter, one of these little dots. And I can drag to another one, okay? Boom, they're connected. Now, that's probably not the right line connectors I want, right? So depending on the relationship, I just choose a different one here. So I just click here and I find, maybe it's this circle and the crow's foot, okay? And on the other end, I go over here and I say it's the crow's foot and I cannot read those. It's 2 lines for this one, okay? That's all I have to do. I don't have to manually go find the symbols and draw them by hand. I don't have to draw a box and then put columns in it with these shapes. I just use those 4 at the top there, and then I just draw a line between them, and I set the parameters. I think this is easier than drawing it by hand. But if you don't want to use the software, I'm not going to force you to use the software as long as it's legible, okay? I need to be able to understand that you know cardinalities of the relationships. Okay? That's the key thing, yes? No. This is all you need to do for that. Yeah, you just need to do the data modeling. Yeah. You don't have to put real data in it, no. Yeah, you search in the templates for, it's either going to be under ERD, ER, or entity relationship. And you'll be able to see pictures of them. Yeah. I think the category is like ER entity relationship diagrams that it's in. Yeah. It won't let me do anything else because it's not wanting me to pay for it because I didn't go and do the thing you have to do to get the premium education account. You have to contact them. I haven't done that yet. What's that? Uh-huh. Then you just gotta look for the ER diagram one, and then you can actually delete everything that's already in here. Okay, so you can just go in here and say, yeah, I don't want any of this stuff. want to delete it. Okay, it's all gone. And then I can just start from scratch. Okay. So you use the template so you have the stencils, and then you just delete everything that's in it and start from scratch for your group. Yeah. Okay. But again, you don't have to use this tool. I think this thing just died. Okay. All right, any other questions? Yes. I'm going to go over that next week. Yeah. Now, there's a couple of, I will tell you this before next week. Okay. There are a couple of different ways to do user stories. If you want to do it in class with me, this is what you need, either a piece of paper or a note card. Okay. Generally, we do them on note cards, but I'm a paperless person, so I like to do them in software or on the board or something. Yeah. But if you want to follow along and kind of get a feel for it and take something back with you, a note card or a piece of paper would be fine. What you're really doing with a user story is you're understanding, let's pick a system, okay? Let's say an HR system, okay? You really want to understand what does the user expect out of that system, and a user story is a very fine-tuned understanding of one specific aspect of that system, okay? So I'll show some examples, but my students last quarter here on the campus in the system design class, they stood outside of the hub and they had to go ask students, if you could redo iLearn or you could redo the registration system, what would it look like, okay? And so, yeah, I want to be able to, I'm a student and I want to be able to add this class, and I don't want to have to go walk over to the undergraduate office every day to go figure out if there's space available. I want to be able to do it from my phone. The minute someone says, gosh, I hated that professor and I don't want to be in that class anymore, and drops the class, as soon as that happens, I want to get a notification on my phone and be able to add it with a click of a button on my phone, okay? That was an example of a user story from someone last quarter going out to the hub and asking students, okay? Same sort of thing for this company. You're going to define what systems you need, okay? Financial system, HR systems, whatever. You're going to do that however many number of user stories, 50, I don't remember how many it is. Okay, it seems like a lot, but when you've got a group of people, 50 is actually not that long because a user story is not very big. Okay? That's kind of like writing your name, like a sentence, I will not smoke weed in class 50 times on the board. That's about all the user story is. It's very simple, okay? Now, when you write those, they don't all have to be for the same system, okay? You could write 5 for the payroll system, 10 for the HR system, 20 for the website. I don't care. We want to see that you can articulate what a user story is for that. Okay. So hope they answer the question. And I will show it. We will actually do an exercise on Tuesday of next week in class. Okay. And then we will do some more exercises on Thursday. So next week will not just be me talking. We are going to have some volunteers to help out here with some user stories, okay? And I'm going to be hoping that all of you will provide input. So because you'll get examples that way. If I have to come up with things, they may not be very helpful to you. Yes. Yeah, so for the project plan, that's a good question. I'm going to go over that next week. How many of you know what project planning is in Agile and Waterfall? Anybody? Obviously you do because you just mentioned the names. I'm going to show you both Waterfall and Agile. Now, your team picks which one you want to use. So if you do Waterfall, your project plan will be really front-loaded with a lot of information, and it will be more formal. Okay? If you go the Agile route, then what you're going to do is you're going to capture your Agile plans over the rest of the course, and so it'll be more of a week-by-week Agile Scrum method that you put in there, that document. Okay? And then if you also use Kanban in addition to Scrum, then you'll have that as well. You'll have a Kanban board that you use ClickUp, Asana, Trello, something like that, and you'll show screenshots of that each week of your progress on your project. I would say that when I give students the choice, 95% choose Agile, 3% choose waterfall, and 2% get confused by the two and try to do both, okay? You have to pick. You're never going to have a project that's both waterfall and agile. So you're going to have to pick next week what you want to do and go with it, okay? But realistically, I prefer agile, and I prefer it with Kanban, okay? Because it gives me the ability to deal with things that are unplanned. Okay? I don't like to plan everything up front, so I'm really not a huge fan of waterfall. But if I work for like a government contractor or something, I'd have to use waterfall. They just don't use agile. They have to use waterfall because it's too risky for them. Okay. All right. Other questions? Yes. Well, you're going to do that in the form of you're going to show the relationships in this diagram. You're going to want to somehow tell me what the primary keys and foreign keys are. You can do it a number of ways. You could color code it and have a key that says the primary key is blue and the foreign key is red. You could write PK next to it, PRI, FK, foreign, whatever you want to do, but just make sure it's consistent, and we can easily do it because frankly, the TAs are going to probably be the ones who glance at these and grade them, okay? So you want to make sure it's understandable. Don't assume that they're going to know what you're talking about. If they don't know, you're going to get a bad grade on it. So make sure it's clear, okay? Now, the last part of the appendix of your individual papers is going to be a narrative. Does anybody have a question about the narrative? Yes? Yes. Yeah, with your group, yes. It's just a little reflection. There's 1 to 2 pages is sufficient. It's what did you take away from working in a group? Because how many of you have worked on group projects before in college? More than I would have expected. That's okay. Still not a lot of people relative to the size of the class. Okay. This is probably the first one for a lot of people. What did you do well as a team? What did you not do well? What did you learn? What could you do differently to make it more successful in the future? I don't know. Do you guys know? Are you required to do like a senior experience here in the undergrad program? I don't know if either of you went here for undergrad. Did you guys go here for undergrad? No? Okay. I don't know if that's the case. Some programs require that you do a senior experience. It's a project with a small group. And if you don't successfully deliver the project, you don't graduate. I don't know if that's the case here or not. It's not? Okay. You're lucky. But you're still going to have projects nonetheless in other classes, okay? And I can tell you, if you take me again, I always have a project, okay? Because the projects are actually more useful for you than just taking an exam. Yes? The appendix actually is just, project plan is not going to, it doesn't matter because it's just a project plan, right? The user stories, the appendix is where the user stories and stuff go. The only things in the appendix are going to be the user stories, the project plan, the design. Those are all appendix items, and your narrative. The narrative doesn't need to be double spaced, just single spaced, a page or two, and that's it. Yeah. Okay. And it's a reflection. Okay. There's no wrong answer unless you write, "Screw you, professor and TAs. I hated the class." That's not really a reflection on your team's performance, okay? So I say that, but I've actually had people do that before in these things because they think that nobody reads them, okay? That's the easiest way to get an F on the paper, by the way, okay? Same thing with like the regular paper. If you just write "screw you, professor" a bunch of times and never write anything, yeah, you're gonna get an F on it, okay? People do that. I don't know why, but they do. All right, any other questions? Yes. That's geared towards what did you recommend for the company for solutions. So like identifying the problem, how did you solve, or how would you recommend that it be solved? Because obviously you can't solve it in the span of this course, right? But what would you recommend, and key takeaways and things like that. And you can be as creative as you want in the way that you do the slides, but remember, they're just not worth a ton of points. Okay. Yeah, pictures, videos, links to other things. Some students will link to their website and then click on it in the middle of the presentation. But just remember, we're doing these as recorded videos unless you come, well, it's kind of past the point to come and tell us that you don't want to do a recorded video. Okay. If you prefer to do it like in private setting, like your group, it's a little late for that now because I'd have to schedule it and I don't have availability now to do that. So is that helpful for you? As far as the template, there's no template. I don't provide one because I want you to be creative. You don't have to, because remember, it's not about UCR, it's just about this company. So just brand it. I would not use the UCR stuff because it's not going to be helpful to you. Yeah. I have a struggle trying to use it for my other class because all the logos and stuff make the text hard to read sometimes. Yeah. Any other questions about the project? Okay, are there any lab questions? Yes. Actually, that's a good question. So there's a lot of people here, and this will be easier than me getting the question from a lot of different people individually. I have no specific requirements for any of the lab reports other than that you capture what you did, what you learned, and any errors that you experienced. I know that one or two of the labs have inside the lab itself contradictory instructions. Okay. I reuse them from another class. I don't care if you single space, double space. All I care is that you write up what you learned, any errors you encountered. If you couldn't complete a lab, then make sure you understand what happened, document it, and explain, I don't know exactly what happened, but based on the error message, this is what I think. Was I right or not? Okay. Remember, those are just credit or no credit. So as long as you show that you made a good faith effort to complete it, then you get credit. Now the exception is, and again, I don't think anybody did anybody do the research paper for the VR? That's again from another class because they had to do either that in class because it was a smaller class, or they had to go write a paper. If nobody chose that option, it's a moot point. But if you did that option, it's just whatever it says for the paper, whatever those requirements are. That's only if you did the research instead of actually doing the lab. Okay. Speaking of which, is anybody going to the VR thing tomorrow morning in Matt's section? Okay. I will be there for that, okay, with the equipment. Okay. I will also do a brief demonstration for anybody who's not got the stuff on their face for the Oculus Rift again. Okay. Assuming it works. Last time, it worked for this first class, and then the second class came, and Windows decided to patch everything, and then it was unusable the rest of the day. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Any other lab questions? Yes. No. Yeah, just articulating what you learned. Yeah. Yes, in the back. No, that's I wish I had the time to go back and double check all the labs I have. I'll do that, but I don't have time during the academic session. I'll have to do it over the summer. So yeah, there's no requirement. Any other questions? All right. See you on Tuesday. Try to show up. Very important class.